The sun sets on a barren planet, its surface cracked and dry. The wind howls across the wasteland, carrying dust and sand that sting like tiny needles. A fierce battle has just ended between two rival alien factions, their ships wrecked and bodies scattered across the land. Among the wreckage lies a young alien girl, her body bruised and broken, blood dripping onto the dusty ground. Her name is Skara, a warrior princess from a distant and powerful planet. But now she is nothing more than a casualty of war. Her enemies believe her dead, abandoned on this forsaken world with no chance of survival. The air is thick with poison, making every breath painful. Sarah lies motionless, struggling to keep her eyes open as the darkness of unconsciousness threatens to take over. She can hear the distant sounds of explosions and laser fire, but they are growing faint. The battle is over, and she has been left behind. As the planet's sun disappears below the horizon, the sky turns an ominous shade of red. Sarah's breathing becomes shallow, her vision blurry. She knows she won't survive unless someone finds her. But who would be foolish enough to come to this remote corner of the galaxy, especially for an enemy like her? She is nothing but a broken warrior, and her fate seems sealed. But then, just as the last flickers of life seem to fade from her body, a new sound reaches her ears. It's faint at first, almost imperceptible against the wind, but as it grows louder, Sarah's heart beats faster, the sound of something moving. Someone, or something, is approaching. Her blurred vision focuses on a figure in the distance, a human. But how? The human soldiers have never been seen in this sector, and certainly not during a battle like this. The figure moves quickly, cloaked in advanced technology, his movements barely making a sound. The human seems to be searching, scanning the area. His sharp eyes catch a glimpse of something, or someone, lying on the ground, and he pauses. The figure is an anomaly, a mystery, and his presence here is both surprising and unsettling. He doesn't seem afraid, despite the dangers lurking on this planet. Instead, he is determined. The human steps closer, his face partially obscured by a mask, but his eyes show no fear, just focus. As he kneels beside Sarah, she feels a surge of panic. She wants to fight, to defend herself, but her body refuses to cooperate. Her limbs are too weak, and her strength is nearly gone. She can barely lift her head as the human inspects her, his hand brushing against her skin. His touch is gentle but purposeful, not the touch of someone looking to harm her. He's saving her. Sarah tries to speak, to tell him to leave, to let her die. She has no desire for help, especially from a human. They are the enemy, the ones who have caused so much pain for her people. But the words die in her throat, and her body betrays her once again. She can't fight back. She can't even speak. All she can do is lie there, vulnerable and broken, as the human lifts her into his arms. Just as he picks her up, a low growl echoes from the shadows. Sarah's instincts scream at her to be cautious. There's something else out there. Something dangerous. The human seems to sense it too, for he suddenly tenses, his eyes scanning the darkened landscape. Sarah doesn't know how, but she can feel the shift in the air. Something is coming. Something fast. Something lethal. Suddenly, from the corner of her vision, she sees movement. A massive, armored alien predator steps into view, its glowing eyes locked onto the human and the injured girl in his arms. Its claws are sharp enough to tear through metal, and its body is a deadly machine of alien muscle and technology. It moves with terrifying speed, its growls vibrating through the ground. The human doesn't hesitate. In one swift motion, he pulls out a sleek weapon, barely visible beneath his cloak. The sound of energy blasts cuts through the air, bright flashes of light illuminating the night. Sarah watches in stunned silence as the human fights the predator, his movements fluid and precise, his weapon cutting through the darkness with deadly accuracy. The alien creature retaliates, its massive claws slashing through the air, narrowly missing the human. The battle is intense, the two combatants locked in a deadly struggle, but the human refuses to back down. Each blast from his weapon weakens the predator, but it's not enough to stop it. With a roar, the creature lunges at him, forcing the human to dive out of the way. Zara's heart races. She's too weak to help, too fragile to defend herself. But as the fight continues, she begins to realize something. This human is not afraid. He is fighting not just for his own life, but for hers as well. The predator makes one final attempt to strike, its claws aimed directly at the human. But just before it can land the blow, the human makes a daring move. He activates a cloaking device, vanishing from the predator's sight. For a moment, the predator stands still, confused, before it lets out an angry roar and begins to search for its prey. The human reappears behind the predator, his weapon charging with energy. In a final, explosive blast, the predator is vanquished, its body crumpling to the ground with a sickening thud. The human doesn't waste any time. He turns back to Zara, lifts her into his arms once again, and begins to move quickly toward a safe location. But as they leave the wreckage behind, one thought lingers in Zara's mind. This human, he is unlike any she's ever encountered. He has saved her life, but why? What does he want from her? She is nothing more than an enemy, a warrior from a race he is taught to destroy. Yet here he is, risking everything to keep her alive. As the two of them disappear into the night, the audience is left with one burning question. Will this unexpected alliance between a human soldier and an alien princess lead to something more? Jack's heart pounds in his chest as he carries the wounded alien princess, Zara, through the dark and barren landscape. He can feel her frailty in his arms, her body limp and fragile. She's breathing shallowly, her pulse weak, but she's alive. That's what matters right now. He knows time is running out, and if he doesn't act quickly, she'll die in his arms. Zara's eyes flicker open briefly, and Jack sees a flash of confusion in her gaze. She's disoriented, still recovering from the trauma of her near-death experience. She's an alien, someone Jack has been taught to fight against. She's from a race that's been waging war on humanity for years. Yet here she is, in his arms, a symbol of everything his enemies represent. A part of him feels angry at the war, angry at the endless suffering his people have endured. But that anger quickly fades. There's no time for hate now. Zara's life is in his hands, and no matter who she is or where she comes from, he can't just let her die. Zara stirs again, her eyes flickering with weak recognition. "What are you doing?" She whispers, her voice hoarse and shaky. Her pride, her sense of superiority, still clings to her even in this vulnerable state. She's a princess, a leader among her people, and the last thing she wants is to be dependent on a human for survival. Jack doesn't answer right away. His focus is solely on finding a safe place to tend to her injuries. He can hear the distant hum of enemy ships patrolling the area, searching for signs of life. They must have realized that Zara is still alive, and they'll stop at nothing to finish what they started. Jack's team was supposed to be here for a reconnaissance mission, not a rescue. They were supposed to gather information on the alien forces and return to base, but now the mission has changed. The stakes are higher, and his priorities have shifted. "I'm saving you," Jack finally says, his voice steady but firm. "You're not going to die here, not on my watch." Zara looks at him with disbelief. "Why? You're human. Why would you save me?" Her words are laced with distrust. To her, humans are the enemy, the inferior race that stands in the way of her people's conquest. They have caused her people nothing but grief and suffering. Her mind races as she tries to make sense of this strange turn of events. But despite her confusion, she can't deny that Jack's determination is genuine. Jack doesn't look at her as he keeps walking, his gaze focused on the path ahead. "Because it's the right thing to do," he says simply, his voice calm and unwavering. "I don't care about your people or your race. You're a living being, and you deserve a chance to survive. I won't leave you here to die." For a moment, Zara is silent, processing his words. Her pride clashes with her growing sense of vulnerability. She's a warrior, a leader, and she's been taught to fear and despise humans her entire life. But here, in the middle of a war-torn planet, in the arms of a human soldier, everything she's been taught is starting to crumble. She can't understand why he's doing this, but somehow she feels a strange sense of comfort in his presence. As Jack continues moving, he checks the sky above them, scanning for any signs of enemy ships. His tactical training kicks in, and he knows they need to get to cover before the alien forces spot them. He takes a sharp turn toward an old, abandoned shelter, a place where his team used to hide out during training exercises. It's not much, but it's a start. Zara is growing heavier in his arms, and he grits his teeth as he forces himself to keep going. His muscles ache from the effort, but he can't afford to slow down. He's on a tight deadline. They're running out of time. When they finally reach the shelter, Jack carefully lays Zara down on the cold, hard ground. He checks her injuries. Her side is badly bruised, and there's a deep gash on her arm that needs immediate attention. Jack sets to work, his hands moving with practiced ease as he patches up her wounds with the medical supplies he carries. Zara flinches at the sting of the antiseptic, but she doesn't protest. For the first time since their encounter, Zara allows herself to relax, even if just for a moment. She watches Jack work, his focus entirely on her, his face set with determination. There's something about him that makes her feel safe. Despite the fact that he's a human, an enemy, she can't shake the feeling that he genuinely wants to help her. Jack finishes bandaging her arm and then leans back, wiping the sweat from his brow. "There, you'll be fine for now, but we need to move quickly. The enemy will be searching for us soon." Zara looks at him, still unsure of his motives. "Why are you doing this?" she asks again, her voice quieter this time. "I've been trained to hate your kind. We were taught that humans are weak, that you are nothing compared to us. Why would you risk your life for me?" Jack meets her gaze, his expression softening for a moment. "Because not all humans are like what you've been taught. I'm not fighting for power or revenge. I'm fighting for survival. For all of us. And right now, that means keeping you alive. Whether you like it or not, you're going to need me, and I'm not going to leave you behind." Zara's mind races, the confusion growing deeper. She doesn't want to rely on him. She doesn't want to admit that this human might be the one to save her life. But despite everything, she's starting to see him differently. He's not just another enemy soldier. He's someone who is willing to risk everything for her, even though she's nothing more than a symbol of his people's war. As the moments stretch on, Zara's anger begins to fade, replaced by a sense of unease. The more she watches Jack, the more she realizes that not all humans are like the ones she's been taught to fear. There's something in him that makes her question everything she's ever known. For the first time, Zara starts to wonder if perhaps she's not the only one caught in a war she never chose. The cold, metallic walls of the abandoned shelter echo the sound of Jack's breathing as he watches over Zara, who is resting against the corner, her eyes closed. The harsh winds outside seem to carry the distant hum of enemy ships, their search for survivors relentless. The planet is vast and unforgiving, and the war that has raged across the stars has finally reached this lonely corner of the galaxy. Jack knows they can't stay here long. They need to move before the aliens find them. But he also knows that they're not out of danger yet. Zara stirs in her corner, the weight of her injuries beginning to take its toll. The bandages Jack applied earlier are starting to soak through, and she winces as she tries to sit up. Her body protests every movement, and her mind races with frustration. She's been trained for battle, taught to survive in the harshest conditions, but now she's weak and vulnerable. A feeling she hasn't known before. Her pride, the same pride that once made her a fierce warrior princess, fights against the growing weakness in her body. Zara was never supposed to be in this position. She was born to lead, to conquer, not to rely on a human soldier for her survival. The memories of her people, of the wars they fought to establish their dominance, flood her mind. And yet, in the presence of this human, She can't help but feel a strange sense of helplessness. She's been defeated, not by an alien enemy, but by the very man she once thought beneath her. Jack looks up from his own thoughts as he hears her stir. He knows the situation is dire. He spent years in the military, trained for countless dangerous missions, but this feels different. The weight of responsibility for Xara's life rests heavily on his shoulders. He doesn't know why he's doing this, why he couldn't just leave her to die on the battlefield. But something about her, something deep down, told him he had to help. "Don't try to move too much," Jack says, his voice firm but not unkind. "You need to rest, or you'll make those wounds worse." Xara glares at him, her pride flaring once more. "I don't need your help," she spits, her voice rough but full of defiance. "I'm not some helpless creature to be saved. I can handle my own wounds." Jack stands up, looking down at her with a steady gaze. "If you could handle them, you wouldn't be lying there bleeding, would you?" He responds quietly. "You're lucky I found you. You should be grateful." Xara's eyes flash with anger, and for a brief moment, she considers fighting him. But she quickly realizes it's not worth it. Her body is too weak, and her energy is fading. The harsh reality of her situation is settling in. She's not a princess in a palace anymore. She's just a survivor, clinging to life in a hostile world where even her strength doesn't guarantee safety. She looks away from Jack, her gaze fixed on the dim light filtering through the cracks in the shelter. The sounds of the war outside seem distant now, but she knows they're never truly gone. The battle rages on, even if she's no longer part of it. Her people are out there, and they won't stop until they've conquered every corner of the galaxy. She once believed in that cause with all her heart, but now, as she lies here, helpless, her belief begins to falter. "What will you do once unhealed?" she asks suddenly, her voice quieter now. "Will you hand me over to your people to be executed? Will you use me as a weapon against my own kind?" Jack hesitates. It's a valid question, and one he's not sure how to answer. The truth is, he doesn't know. He's been taught that aliens like her are the enemy, that they're the reason humanity has suffered for so long. But the more he spends time with her, the more he starts to see that Xara is not just some faceless enemy. She's a person who is hurting, who is scared, who is just as trapped by the war as he is. "I don't know," he admits, his voice heavy with the weight of his words. "I'm not here to make decisions for your people or mine. I'm just trying to survive. But what I do know is that I'm not going to leave you here to die. I won't abandon you like the others did." Xara looks at him for a long moment, searching his face for any signs of deceit. But all she sees is sincerity. For the first time, she's starting to question everything she's been taught. Her entire life has been built around the idea of superiority, of being the conqueror, of never needing anyone. But here she is, needing help from a human soldier. And in that moment, Xara begins to understand something she's never truly grasped before. Survival isn't about strength or power. It's about connections. It's about trust. And that's something she has to learn, no matter how hard it is. "I was taught to never trust humans," she says softly, her voice tinged with regret. "We were taught that you were weak, that you were nothing compared to us. But now, I see that I was wrong." Jack doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. He just watches her, understanding that this is a turning point for both of them. Xara's pride is still there, but it's been shaken. She's starting to see the cracks in the foundation of everything she once believed. Jack, on the other hand, is beginning to understand that not all aliens are enemies. Some of them, like Xara, are just trying to survive, just like him. The wind howls outside the shelter once more, and Jack feels the weight of their situation pressing down on him. They can't stay here for long. The enemy is still out there, and their resources are limited. But for now, he focuses on the present. He focuses on Xara, on keeping her alive. The harsh realities of war have never been more clear to him than they are now. Survival, it seems, is never as simple as choosing sides. It's about doing what's necessary, no matter how difficult or complicated it may seem. As the moments pass in silence, Jack feels the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He's not sure what the future holds, but for the first time, he's not just fighting for himself. He's fighting for something bigger, something that could change everything. The harsh winds outside howl like the roar of distant beasts, sending a shiver down Jack's spine as he peers through the cracked window. The landscape outside is nothing but barren rocks and endless sand dunes, a desolate expanse that offers no comfort. They are alone here, isolated from the rest of the galaxy. But Jack knows they can't stay in the shelter forever. The enemy, the alien hunters, are getting closer by the minute. Sarah is still recovering from her wounds, but she's growing restless. Her sharp eyes flicker around the shelter, constantly on alert, her warrior instincts never fully dulled. Jack, on the other hand, is more practical. His mind races, calculating their options. If they stay here too long, they'll be easy targets. He can't let that happen. I can't stay here much longer, Kara says, her voice hoarse, yet filled with determination. I'm getting stronger. We need to leave before they find us. Jack looks at her, torn. He knows she's right, but he also knows she's not fully healed. Her injuries are still fresh, and she won't survive long without proper medical attention. But the idea of waiting in this shelter, exposed and vulnerable, is not a choice either. They need to move. Your wounds aren't healed yet. You're still weak, Jack protests. I can't let you risk it. Sarah glares at him, her pride rising once again. I am not weak, human. I have fought through worse. Jack sighs, rubbing his temples. I know, but you're not invincible. This isn't about pride. We need a plan. Sarah falls silent, her mind racing. She knows Jack is right. She's not invincible, and she can't afford to let her pride get in the way of their survival. But the thought of waiting around, waiting for her enemy to catch up, is unbearable. She knows the enemy won't stop searching for her. She's a high-value target, a princess of a powerful alien race, and her capture would be a major blow to her people's efforts. But it's also what makes her so dangerous to Jack. Suddenly, a loud thud shakes the walls of the shelter, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps approaching. Jack's eyes widen in alarm. The enemy is here. We have to move. Now, Jack says, urgency filling his voice. Sarah looks at him, her eyes narrowing. I told you I can handle this. You should leave while you can. Jack clenches his jaw. He's not going to abandon her now. He has no choice but to trust her, even if it means risking his own life. He grabs his gear and shoulders his rifle, ready for whatever comes next. We fight together, Sarah. You're not alone in this, he says firmly, his tone resolute. Sarah hesitates for a moment, then nods. Fine. But we need to move fast. The two of them burst out of the shelter, the cold wind slapping against their faces as they race across the barren land. The sound of pursuing footsteps grows louder, a constant reminder that they're being hunted. The landscape offers little cover, just endless dunes and jagged rocks scattered across the horizon. Jack looks over at Sarah as they run. She's struggling to keep up, her injuries slowing her down. But there's a fire in her eyes, a determination that refuses to let her fall behind. Jack knows they can't outrun their enemies forever, but he's not ready to give up yet. He's fought too hard to get this far. Suddenly, a loud roar echoes across the dunes. Jack's heart races. The enemy is getting closer, and they're not alone. The sound of the roar sends a chill down his spine. He's heard rumors of the aliens' brutal war beasts, massive creatures that hunt and kill with deadly precision. They've been used in past battles to track and eliminate targets, and now, it seems, they'd been unleashed on him and Sarah. We're not going to outrun that thing, Jack says through gritted teeth, his mind racing. We need to fight back. Sarah looks at him, her eyes dark with determination. Then let's make them regret underestimating us. Without another word, She reaches into her pouch and pulls out a small, compact device. With a few quick movements, she activates it, and suddenly, the ground beneath them trembles. The air crackles with energy as the device sends a powerful shockwave across the area, temporarily stunning their pursuers. Jack's eyes widen in shock. He didn't know Kshara had something like that. It's an advanced piece of technology, likely designed for use in extreme situations like this. The shockwave doesn't last long, but it's enough to give them a head start. We have to keep moving, Sarah urges, already turning back towards the dunes. This will only buy us a few minutes. The two of them race onward, their pace faster now, adrenaline fueling every step. The sound of the war beast's roar fades into the distance, but Jack knows they're not safe yet. The shockwave may have slowed them down, but it won't stop them for long. They're still being hunted. As they make their way through the rocky terrain, Jack can feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He's not just fighting to survive anymore. He's fighting for Xara's life, too. He doesn't know what will happen when they finally get out of here, but one thing is certain. He's not letting her go. They're in this together, whether they like it or not. Xara glances at Jack, her face set in determination. We have no choice but to keep moving forward. We don't stop. Not until we're out of their reach. Jack nods, his resolve hardening. The chase is on, and there's no turning back now. The night is thick with tension, the air alive with the distant sounds of the enemy closing in. Jack and Sarah stand at the edge of the cliff, their bodies exhausted, faces smeared with dirt and blood. Their breath is ragged, the cold wind biting into their skin. The hunt has been relentless, and they know this could be their last stand. The alien hunters are almost upon them, their footsteps a heavy drumbeat echoing in the silence. Jack scans the horizon, searching for any sign of escape, but the vast expanse of rock and sand offers no sanctuary. There's nowhere to run now. Their enemies are too close, and the war beast, a massive creature, is only moments away from their position. It's nearly impossible to outrun or hide from something like that. They are trapped, with no choice but to face what comes next. Xara's grip on her weapon tightens, her knuckles white. She's standing tall, despite the pain from her injuries. Her fierce warrior spirit refuses to let her show any sign of weakness. Jack can see it in her eyes. She's ready to fight to the end. But Jack isn't sure if even they can survive the sheer force of what's coming. The odds are stacked against them, and the weight of their situation presses heavily on his chest. We can't fight them all, Jack mutters, looking over at Sarah. His voice is strained, tired, but we can make them regret coming after us. Sarah gives him a sharp, determined nod. You're right. We fight. We don't give them the satisfaction of taking us alive. The sound of the war beast's growls gets louder, and soon its shadow looms over them like a monstrous specter. Jack can see its massive form moving through the darkness, its glowing eyes searching for them. The beast is nearly twice the size of a human, with thick, scaled armor and claws sharp enough to tear through metal. It's the perfect hunter, and Jack knows they have only a few moments before it charges. Get ready, Jack says, his voice low but firm. He checks his weapon, his fingers brushing over the trigger as he prepares himself for the fight of his life. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about standing tall in the face of impossible odds. Xara shifts, crouching slightly, her hand on the hilt of her weapon. Her breathing steadies, her focus narrowing as the tension in the air thickens. She looks at Jack, offering him a brief nod of reassurance. There's no fear in her eyes, just the readiness to strike. It's that same fierceness that Jack has seen in her since the beginning, and it's the thing that's kept them both alive this long. They can hear the footsteps of the hunters now, the soft whisper of their movement cutting through the stillness. It's only a matter of seconds before they're in range, and Jack can feel his heart pounding harder with every passing moment. The hunters aren't just any aliens. They're trained, deadly, and unrelenting. But Jack has something they don't: the will to survive. I'll draw their attention, Sarah says suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension. You get to the high ground and take them out from there. Jack looks at her in disbelief. Are you crazy? You're hurt. You can't. I'll be fine. Sarah interrupts, her gaze steady and unwavering. This is our only chance. Do you trust me? Jack hesitates for a moment, but then he nods. She's right. They don't have a choice, and he can't let her face this alone. All right, we do it your way. Without another word, Sarah moves first, darting into the shadows to the left, disappearing from view. Jack watches her for a moment, his heart in his throat. He's terrified for her, but he knows she's a force to be reckoned with. He can only hope that the plan works. As the seconds tick by, Jack finds his way up the rocky cliffside, finding a small outcrop that gives him a better view of the surrounding area. His pulse is racing as he raises his rifle, steadying his hands as he prepares to fight. His eyes scan the horizon, waiting for the signal. The moment comes quickly. Zara's battle cry rings through the night air, sharp and defiant. The alien hunters immediately turn their attention to her, their eyes glowing in the darkness. The war beast growls, its monstrous head snapping around to focus on her. Jack takes a deep breath, steadying his aim. With a single pull of the trigger, Jack fires. The first shot rings true, hitting one of the alien hunters square in the chest. The alien falls, but the others quickly regroup, rushing towards Stara. The war beast is right behind them, charging with terrifying speed. Stara fights with everything she has, her movements a blur of deadly precision, as she faces off against the oncoming attackers. She's injured, but her strength is unmatched. Jack can see her deflecting blows and landing powerful strikes, but there's no time to savor the moment. More enemies are closing in, and the war beast is almost upon her. Jack takes another shot, hitting another alien in the shoulder. But the battle is far from over. The hunters are relentless, and the war beast is bearing down on them with a fury unmatched by anything Jack has ever seen. It's only a matter of time before they're overwhelmed. But Jack refuses to give up. He won't let Sarah die here. Not like this. His hand tightens around the rifle as he prepares for one final shot. The war beast is just a few feet away, its massive jaws snapping open, ready to strike. Jack's mind is a blur as he takes aim, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He pulls the trigger once more. The shot hits its mark, striking the beast in the side. The creature lets out a deafening roar of pain, stumbling for a moment before charging forward again. But this time, the beast hesitates. It turns, confused and injured, its momentum slowed. Jack takes advantage of the moment, firing another round, this time hitting it in the neck. The war beast stumbles and collapses. The remaining hunters pause, stunned by the fall of their beast. Jack doesn't waste a second. He leaps down from his perch, running towards Stara. The fight isn't over, but for now, they've earned a small victory. The war beast lies motionless, its immense body sprawled out on the rocky ground. Jack breathes heavily, his heart still pounding from the intense battle. The smoke from the gunfire lingers in the air, and the sound of the enemy hunters retreating into the distance barely reaches his ears. His focus, however, remains entirely on Xara. She stands, bloodied but alive, her face a mask of determination. Her breathing is ragged, but there is no sign of fear in her eyes. For a moment, there is silence between them, the chaos of the battle fading into the background. Jack approaches her cautiously, his eyes scanning her for any signs of serious injury. She's hurt, but there's a fire in her that refuses to be extinguished. Her warrior spirit shines through, even in the aftermath of the battle. She looks at him, offering a small but fierce smile, as if to reassure him that she's still standing strong. You didn't have to do that, Tara says, her voice low but filled with a mix of gratitude and respect. You could have left me behind, but you didn't. Jack simply shrugs, a tired grin appearing on his face. I couldn't leave you. Not now. We've come too far together. Sarah nods, her expression softening for the briefest of moments. You're right. We've been through too much to let it end like this. Their brief moment of respite is interrupted by the distant sound of more approaching enemies. The relief they felt seconds ago is quickly replaced by the harsh reality that the battle is far from over. The hunters have regrouped, and they won't stop until they've taken both of them down. The odds are still stacked against them, but Jack and Sarah are no longer the same people they were when this fight began. They've learned to rely on each other, trust each other in ways they never expected. "We can't stay here," Jack says urgently, glancing around at their surroundings. "We need to move. Now." Zara doesn't hesitate. She's already taking action, her eyes scanning the terrain for their next move. She reaches down, picking up her weapon with practiced ease, and starts moving toward a higher vantage point. Jack follows closely behind, his senses sharp, knowing that this might be their last chance to escape. They need to outsmart the hunters and survive, but they also need to understand each other better if they are to have any hope of making it through this. As they climb, the air grows colder, the wind biting at their skin. Jack can feel the weight of their situation pressing down on him. They've been running, fighting, surviving for so long, but they still don't know who their true enemies are. The alien hunters are relentless, but they are just pawns in a much bigger game. They've already learned that much. When they reach the top of the cliff, Jack stops, his eyes narrowing as he surveys the area below. The hunters are closing in, and they're faster than Jack expected. His heart races, but he doesn't allow himself to panic. He focuses on the task at hand. Zara stands beside him, her posture tense but composed. She turns to him, her face serious. "We can't outrun them, not for long." "I know," Jack says, his eyes still scanning the horizon. "But we can make them think we're gone." He pulls out a small device from his belt, a cloaking device that he's been holding onto for just such an occasion. It's not perfect, but it should be enough to buy them some time. Jack activates it, and the device hums softly as it creates a distortion in the air around them. They are no longer visible to the naked eye. "Stay close," Jack whispers, his voice barely audible. "We move quickly and quietly. If we're lucky, we'll slip past them." Sarah doesn't say anything, but she nods, understanding the stakes. The two of them move silently through the rocky terrain, their steps light but deliberate. Every sound, every movement is calculated. They know that even the slightest mistake could be their last. The cloaking device keeps them hidden, but it's not foolproof. They still have to be careful, relying on their instincts to guide them through the maze of jagged rocks and narrow passes. The hunters are getting closer, their footfalls heavy and relentless. Jack can hear them, feel the tension in the air as they search for any sign of their prey. Minutes feel like hours as they move through the landscape, every second stretching out before them. Jack can feel his legs burning from the strain, but he forces himself to keep going. He's not going to let Sarah down. Not now. Not after everything they've been through. Finally, they reach a small cave, hidden behind a cluster of boulders. It's not much, but it offers them some protection from the hunters. Jack deactivates the cloaking device, and they step inside, crouching low to avoid being seen. For a moment, they sit in silence, their breathing heavy, but steady. The cave is dark, but it feels safer than the open terrain they've just crossed. Jack looks over at Sarah, who's standing with her back against the wall, her expression thoughtful. She seems calm, but Jack knows her mind is racing. "We've made it this far," she says quietly, her eyes meeting his. "But we can't keep running forever. Sooner or later, they'll find us." Jack nods, his face hardening with resolve. "I know, but we're not just running anymore. We're fighting for something bigger than ourselves. We need to find out who's behind all of this and put an end to it." Zara's eyes flicker with a new sense of determination. "I agree. We need answers, and we'll get them together." They both know that their journey is far from over. The battle is still raging, and their enemies are closing in. But for the first time since the beginning of this fight, Jack and Sarah are no longer just survivors. They are allies, two warriors bound by a common purpose. And together, they will face whatever comes next.